Hey guys, hope you had an excellent Christmas. It's Tyler as always. I am going to be going through the core mechanics and maybe one extra thing of Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Now, this is a review retrospective that is assuming you know what a D20 system is and you have at least some knowledge of Pathfinder 1st Edition, because I'm making this review series in the context of why do this when Pathfinder 1 already exists? That's the biggest value proposition for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, in my opinion. So I'll be focusing on four main things in this video. I'm not going to be tackling specific classes. Feats we'll get into on their own thing, because I think it's a major thing that they have not improved upon. Spoiler. We're just going to go off the core mechanics. So unchanged from Pathfinder 1st Edition and from most other D20 systems, Dungeons & Dragons 3rd Edition, 3.5, 5e even, to resolve most things, the core mechanic, you roll a D20, you add whatever modifiers you happen to add, and you're trying to meet or exceed a difficulty class, the DC of a given thing. Be that a fixed number, like a wall, which is not actively opposing you, it's just a wall, and it's a DC 15 to climb over it, a 10-foot wall or whatever, or if it's something that's actively trying to fight against you, such as a wizard is casting a spell on you and you need to attempt to resist it. Basically, for everything, you'll roll D20 unless otherwise suggested. That is unchanged. We're still using the same core mechanic, which means we still have a linear distribution of you are just as likely to totally fail and roll a 1 as you are to supremely succeed and roll a 20. Pathfinder 1st Edition solved this by making the numbers gigantic. So at low levels, you were very unlucky, or you were very susceptible to luck. And as you went higher and higher, you became much more adept at what it is your character is supposed to do. You could also specialize in very particular ways, and that's one of the four things I wanted to tackle in this video, and I'll get it out of the way right away. In Pathfinder 1st Edition, and in Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 for that matter, you got a certain number of skill ranks at each level, and you could put these into anything you wanted up to ranks equal to your level. And this was a pretty brilliant system. It fixed the issue of 3.5, where you would just jam a skill all the way up and be the sort of ridiculous one-trick pony that doesn't really necessarily exist even in fiction. It just doesn't make for very interesting role-playing. But it also allowed you to be a very, very good specialist, right? At level 10, you're only presumably halfway through the game. Although, yeah, nobody ever really does play to level 20, that's true. You are now 50% of the way swinging the D20 one way or the other. The worst you can do is rolling a 1, and then you still have a DC 11, which is an average task. So you will always complete an average task, at least. And that's under duress because of the beauty of the take 10 and take 20 system. I am unsure if they kept that in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, but I think that is a universal idea that you can take into almost any game. I think it's a fantastic one, and it deserves its own video. In Pathfinder 2nd Edition, we've replaced skill ranks with skill proficiencies. And you can only increase in proficiency from, for example, trained to expert at any level, expert to master at 7th level or higher, and master to legendary at 15th level or higher. This is a big misstep, in my opinion. At those individual levels, it kind of looks the same as I'm level 7, I have 7 ranks in perception, plus all the other modifiers. Great, okay. Except what this ends up doing is it means that there's these gap levels. at level 5, at level 6, for example, where you just have to be trained at a bunch of different crap, and you really feel like a jack of all, master of none. And that's just not very interesting. It makes you feel very often, at least in the skills department, which is what end up being rolled most often if you're playing something that's not a glorified war game and you're not in combat 24/7. Even in combat, the skills get rolled quite a lot because of athletics now. So it's very frustrating that we've taken part of the joy to me of Pathfinder First Edition and of making a character in general, making a specialist. Not a one-trick pony, but a specialist, an important difference. And it feels like you are way less able to specialize in this game. Not to the extreme extent. And part of that is the balance, the obsession with balance. Ask anyone what they love about Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and it's probably that it's easy to balance. Again, a topic for another video. But the problem comes with every encounter being balanced very well. Every encounter also becomes very boring very quickly. Of course, this is my opinion. But if you know that pretty much you're going to have a 50-50 shot at succeeding at any given thing because the DCs are going up exactly so often with your skill ranks, because your skill ranks can't, or proficiencies rather, can't outpace how good your character is in other aspects, you kind of know what to expect all the time. Unless your DM is explicitly throwing a much bigger problem at you. But the problem with that is, now you're put into situations where you simply cannot succeed and must run away. Now, that is a change I kind of like with the crit system. And I do like this in a vacuum. I think this is one of the more elegant pieces of design in the system. Pathfinder 2nd Edition takes the very flawed D20 crit system, which again is very linear, it's just 5% in either direction, and says you crit if you beat the DC by more than 10, and you fumble if you fail the DC by more than 10, or 10 or more. I think it's at 10 or more. What does that mean? It means that if you're absolutely terrible at sneaking, you should probably find something else to do and not just be attached at the hip. Something other people who like Pathfinder 2nd Edition will also mention is that it really encourages teamwork. But it also, in this way, I've found, encourages some cool spots to actually split the party and have somebody not just be a follower and not just go, oh, the rogue is stealthing? Well, what's the worst that happens? I'll roll stealth too. I'll chuck it in there. No, the worst that it's way more likely that if this, goblin or whatever rolls a 12 perception, well, if you've got like a -10, you roll 2, well, you're not just normally failing and they spot you. You've alerted him to every single one of you, and now the whole party's been spotted. So that's pretty cool. I like that crit system. It also makes it to where that players, knowing this mechanic, are less likely to try abjectly stupid stuff just for, the laughs, for the, hey, I might try to seduce the dragon. Well, the game's mechanics have already told you that's probably not going to work before the GM, you ever have to. It's players have read the book, they sit down for session 0, they already know, okay, this mechanic, I'm not going to be able to do something that absurd, that goofy. I just don't have the skills for it. Maybe eventually, right? It's all context-based. So that, I think, is a pretty good way to solve some of the swinginess of the D20. Now, before I make the video too long, third thing, action economy. We've moved to the 3 action economy, somewhat of Pathfinder Unchained action economy in 1st edition. I really do not understand how this is simpler or makes more sense to players of Pathfinder 1st edition. And my conclusion at the end of this review series is going to be that this this game is not made for people who played Pathfinder First Edition. It is made for people who played Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition or who haven't played tabletops before. And that's because we have spent 12 years understanding what a standard action, what a move, longer than this because it's 3.5. We've spent almost 20 years having a developed understanding of what, yep, you get a standard and a move, and then a swift and however many free actions, as makes sense, right? Okay. So you've effectively got a 3-move action economy in first edition Pathfinder, right? Standard, move, swift, if you have them. Great, makes sense. Now, there's some obnoxious rulings, like if you use a swift action on somebody else's initiative, you don't get yours on, the following turn because you used it. Barring obnoxious timings, that's not that complicated to keep track of, in my opinion. Most things, barring, weird edge cases here and there, take a standard action. If it involves movement, drawing your weapon, moving, etc., takes a move action. Simple enough, right? Well, we've moved to this 3-action economy where everything is just an action. Oh, okay, great, and you get 3 actions per turn. Well, except it's not just an action. Some stuff takes 1 action, some stuff takes 2 actions, some stuff takes 3 actions, and then you have reactions and you still have free actions. How much simpler have we made the game in doing this? Well, what I've noticed is that we've accomplished a whole lot of decision paralysis. What do I mean by that? Example, they got rid of base attack bonus and have instead replaced it with weapon proficiency. But weapon proficiency still will never give you additional attacks. You just use an attack, or use an action and make an attack. So at level 1, you can make 3 attacks in a turn. How is this not broken? Each subsequent attack suffers a -5 to hit. Well, this is how base attack bonus worked. It's just a different way of wording it. It's just taking negatives rather than getting a big enough modifier to have some left over. It's something you do in the here and now rather than have written down on a character sheet effectively. The problem becomes, in first edition Pathfinder, when I know my character cannot take multiple attacks, I run up, I try to stab the guy with my dagger, that's my turn. I'm done. I know what I was doing. In second edition Pathfinder, I have the opportunity to walk up to the guy, stab him twice, but maybe I could walk up to this guy, stab him, and then throw my dagger at this other guy, or maybe I could walk up to this guy, stab him, and then create some distance and back up so he can't stab me 3 times. Okay, cool, that's all great, except it's kind of a fake choice. Go through the numbers just in general in the game and see at level 1 how often you can land a hit with a -5, a -25% chance to hit. Well, fun fact, you're at about a coin toss at level 1 as to whether or not you're hitting. Your third hit is pretty much guaranteed impossible to land. And it's almost guaranteed to get you a fumble because you're pretty likely to roll 10 under their AC with a -10. So, Pathfinder First Edition is oft derided for having these trap options. And the 3-action economy, it either just ends in you sitting there thinking for a while and going, wait a minute, that's stupid. I'm just going to do what I would have ended up doing in Pathfinder First Edition. It makes, as I showed previously, the book very confusing because you have to interpret glyphs all of the time that interrupt the nice formatting of the book. And it can just trap new players into thinking they're doing a cool thing, and really they're never, if they're not thinking about the math, they're just stabbing a lot, and they're like, dude, I can't frickin' hit anything. I have played this game 4 times, 3 not including the playtest, and I have seen this happen in 2 of those 4 play sessions. I'm not sure that this was a better alternative to standard move, Full round. Swift, you know. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. That fourth point I wanted to mention, as far as mechanics go, is the problem of sustained spells, which is tied into the action economy. It's the way the magic works. They have really nerfed the hell out of magic because they're scared of the, quadratic spellcaster, linear marshals. That has always been a deficiency in GMing to me. If you can't take away materials, take away the caster's ability to speak effectively, deafen the caster, make the caster go through a bunch of resources in a day because they're resource limited in a way that a guy with a sword is not necessarily resource limited. Limit line of sight with things like walls. I don't know what to tell you. Balance discussions have their place, but Pathfinder 2nd Edition in many regards has made the wizard and the other spellcasters almost so lame that, for example, sleep. Great, I can put people to sleep, except if there's any amount of noise, they just immediately wake back up. So it's an incredibly niche spell that I'm almost never going to use. All right. People make the argument, well, sleep in 1st edition Pathfinder was way too strong. Everybody just used it all the time. Okay, that's why it had a hit die cap. That's why it couldn't affect things that were that strong, Okay, you used it a lot early on. Great, fantastic. That's okay. It has a hit die cap, it has a will save, you can go poke the guy to wake him up. If there's stuff that just can't be put to sleep. If you had a problem with one spell breaking your game that much to the point that you feel like you need to nerf it into the ground, I think it's better to ask as a GM whether there's not something you're doing wrong, right? Whether there's not a kind of glaring issue if every encounter you can come up with, especially if you're prepping, but even if you're, improving on the fly, every single one of them can just be beat by sleep, because early on, pop an encounter out there that is of some undead, for example, super common. Great, now the wizard has prepared one of their very few resources, one of their very few spell slots, and it's totally useless here. Sword is usually useful, at least in all, pretty much every combat situation. So, and he's got a lot more health and it's a lot harder to hit, etc., etc. So, yeah, there are a lot of things that frustrate me about this game. The obsession with balance being one of them, because balance is ultimately something that the GM is going to make happen on the fly. The book doesn't necessarily really need to do any of that. But again, that's a topic for another video. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you like the mechanics in the core mechanics in Pathfinder 1st Edition. I briefly touched upon spellcasting here as well, so it's a little dive into classes. And next, let's dive into the classes. Sure, I think the core classes have some interesting things in here, and then maybe feats. Feats will probably have to be its own video, because that will be a Pathfinder 1st Edition, 2nd Edition head-to-head on why feats are really poorly designed, poorly executed, I should say. There's some really cool designs of feats, and the execution, it sucked both times. There's a spoiler of that video. All right, if you watched this far, thanks. See ya.